Albany, Rochester, Buffalo, you'll find a fusion of jazz and hip-hop. The rhythms in from the bright lights of NYC to the falls of Niagara. Every corner, every town, we're all connected, brother.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome, and happy Juneteenth. Long story, but welcome. We are here in June. We're going to have part 2 of our New York Space Business Roundtable conversation on the topic of AI and its interaction, this time commercial space and government military applications. I'm Tamara Bond-Williams. I'm happy to welcome you here today. I would like to let you know that right now you are on mute. You are unable to unmute yourself. That is by design, but we do actively encourage you to make good use of the chats. They are open. We will be monitoring them for questions, and we welcome your questions. This is a robust, exciting topic. We have amazing speakers, and so let's have a conversation. With that, Lou, over to you.
Well, thank you, Tamara, and welcome everyone to the June New York Space Business Roundtable. And we are ready to go with this one. This is as hot a topic as we've probably had, and probably the most credentialed panel we've ever had for it. So we're very excited. And today, as Tamara said, we're going to be talking about the convergence of government and commercial with this. Can the two benefit each other through the use of AI? And what the heck is AI? I bet everybody's going to have a different definition today. So before we get to our conversation today, let's go to let's thank the people who actually brought us here. Tamara, we've got some housekeeping.
We do. Let's do that.
Okay, these are our sponsors. These the people who pick up the dinner tab. We've got Daruva Space, who we're delighted to have, Satshore from India, also delighted to have, and Luxembourg Trade and Invest, which is our long-term sponsor. And I just want to shout out Paul Steinmetz, who was the Consul General posted in New York for many years and was a very, very good friend of the Roundtable. He really was the one who brought the trade and investment group to the Roundtable. He's just had a party last week, and he's gone back now to Luxembourg for another posting. So, Paul, if you're listening, thanks again for all the support, and we'll try to make this a great session for you. And we'd like to thank all of our supporting organizations here. You can see them. Especially the NASA New York Space Grant Consortium in upstate New York will be up there in September, and we'll tell you a little bit more about a live roundtable we're doing up at Cornell University in beautiful upstate New York. And of course, Space News, and you'll be hearing from Jason Rainbow shortly on that. Okay. Now, what I'd like to do is, instead of our usual video, we usually show a Better Satellite World video, as you know, our loyal supporters know. But today we're going to spend a few minutes talking about how the world gets better, slowly but surely. Just to go back in history, U.S. General Gordon Granger stood on Texas soil and read General Orders Number 3. And it went like this: the people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. And maybe it was this event that Mahatma Gandhi had in mind when nearly a century later he said, to believe that what has not occurred in history will not occur at all is to argue disbelief in the dignity of man. Well, perhaps space is the scientific argument for that, proving that all people have a frontier for dignity, inalienably so. And the people you're going to hear speaking today, and the Roundtable and SSPI and the New York Space Alliance, all subscribe to that notion. And so we're really delighted to be here on this day. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to our producer, Tamara Bond-Williams, for a few words on today's observance. Tamara?
Thank you so much, Lou. And I am super excited to share with you a brief presentation. This is not going to be the history of Juneteenth, which is today. This is rather a little bit of the history of our United States space program. Way back in, I'm going to say 1963, Ed Dwight was appointed by President Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, to become America's first Black astronaut candidate. And he was supposed to be going to space way back when. Alas, America's history has been frequently turbulent. The fact that you had to specify a first Black anything tells you something about the history. And the fact that our president was shortly thereafter assassinated tells you something else about our history. But as Lou mentioned, the march of progress is indomitable. And so this same gentleman, Mr. Ed Dwight, also went on in his rest of his life to become a sculptor, a rather prominent and famous sculptor. And I just want to share with you an installation that he opened, that he installed in Texas just last year, called Emancipation. This monument is sitting outside of the Texas Capitol, Texas being the very last state in the Union to receive the notice, or at least to let the slaves know that there was a notice that emancipation had occurred, and therefore all slaves were free. And this is an amazing sculpture. I want you to note over to the right of this sculpture that there is a memorial of progress, contributions to progress by Black people in the state, including the first African-American to walk in space, Bernard Harris. There are some 20 figures in the entire monument depicting the evolution from slavery to accomplishment. And just this year, Ed Dwight, by the good offices of Blue Origin, had the ability to finally, at the age of 90, reach space. Progress delayed is never therefore denied. We are grateful to have the opportunity to watch Ed finally achieve this lifelong dream. And with that, let's just see a little bit about that moment.
And here exits Ed Dwight. This gentleman has waited a long time to go to space.
Long time coming.
Selected in the early 60s as the first Black astronaut to fly, although he did not get to fly then, today was his opportunity, and man, what a flight for him. Finally, an official astronaut.
I'm ready.
Styles, assembling our newly minted astronauts.
Overwhelmed. Everything you can think of. And I thought I really didn't need this in my life, but now I need it in my life. This is fabulous. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for being part of this.
All right, I am ecstatic.
Ecstatic. Did anything surprise you? What was it like looking at Earth?
Well, yeah, the transitions about the separations and stuff were a little bit more dynamic. I mean, they were nice, smooth, but that's how it's supposed to be. But it makes your mind wander. Did something go wrong with it? But no, it was absolutely terrific, and the view, I mean, just even I couldn't see it, I could see it. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, even if I couldn't see, I could see. Isn't that nice? Cameron, he looks like he's in good shape. He's in better shape than me. 90. Unbelievable.
Yeah. thank you all for letting me share that with you. That historic moment happened exactly 1 month ago to the day.
Yep, it's beautiful. Okay, thanks again, Tamara. Let's get to it, everyone. Jason, I don't know how you follow that one, but you can. As I mentioned, the focus this month is still on AI, but with a look at connecting threads between commercial space, AI, and the government's need for innovation from the private sector and the government's policies regarding AI that will impact, conversely, the private sector. What has your reporting come up with to perhaps demonstrate or not that kind of convergence is something we're beginning to see?
Yeah, thank you, Lou. And it's always great to be here, and what a great topic and group of panelists you have today. I'm looking forward to learning a lot from your upcoming discussion. So Space News recently did a webinar on AI innovation in space that touched on this. And for those who missed it, you can find the recording hosted by my colleague and New York Space Business Roundtable veteran, Deborah Werner, on spacenews.com. But during the webinar, Aerospace Corp's Director of Innovation, Science and Technology, Mike Nemiroff, made some interesting points about how AI should be seen as a tool, and you have to think carefully about how you use different tools. He likened it to construction tools. He said he would let his 7-year-old use a screwdriver or a power drill with his supervision, but certainly not a chainsaw, whether he's standing there or not. He would use a chainsaw, but he wouldn't operate a crane. And AI is kind of like that. There is a need to build in guardrails for specific applications. More important missions will require more robust guardrails. And while the risk tolerance among decision makers in the space industry, including governments, is rising, there is a sense that there more needs to be done to articulate what the risks actually are around AI to these decision makers. Mike pointed to how the whole community, academic, industry, government, and federally funded research and development centers must come together to come up with methodologies that ground the performance of AI and machine learning algorithms running on board spacecraft. So if the AI algorithms start to behave outside of whatever those bounds are, they would automatically revert back to some baseline level of autonomy that we've been doing in space for 50 years. It's kind of like how commercial drones can be programmed to return home or land or hover when they lose connectivity. So I think governments are naturally going to be looking for that balance between capability and safety, for lack of a better word. And that's not really any different from other rules already in place to keep the commercial space industry playing field fair and sustainable. It's a fine line the FCC always has to tread. There's so much innovation coming into space and new economics leading to unprecedented numbers of satellites, but you have to keep that innovation in check because it can quickly create an unsustainable environment. Without proper rules and regulations, you can ruin space for everyone, including yourself. But of course, you also have to think about this dynamic on an international level, because space is by definition global. So how much should the United States pull back its space industry when other nations are charging full steam ahead? So complicated picture.
Yeah, thank you. It really is. Again, reverting back, right? But under what conditions, how, why? I mean, Michael Dell this morning, I heard him on one of the financial channels, Jason. He's saying, it's really just a productivity tool. I mean, he was simplifying it. But I guess you're saying, and maybe when we talk to Wallaroo a little bit later, got Jim Cunningham here, he's talking about deploying AI models on satellites. You're talking about something a little bit more policy driven, a little bit more restrained. Is there anybody out there? Has it been done yet? Has that been activated, or is anybody working on that you know of?
I think your panelists can probably speak better to this, but I am not aware of comprehensive rules in the US that regulate the development of AI or specifically restrict its use. Although I think there are guidelines and various frameworks out there to guide AI regulation.
Yeah.
But I'll learn more from your panel today, hopefully.
Yeah. Just looking down the road over the summer and into the fall, anything you're going to be reporting on this subject or anything peripheral to it that we should be looking for?
I'm glad you said that. So I would encourage everyone to visit spacenews.com because we've recently added a new AI tab for all the latest AI news in the space sector, including from my colleague Sandra, who specializes in the government side.
Right.
I'm more on the commercial, but of course there's a blurred line there. But yeah, we've added a dedicated section on our site. It's become more than just a buzzword. Expecting plenty of news. Now, I recently spoke to the director of aerospace and satellite at Amazon Web Services, which is one of the biggest cloud computing providers in the world. And he said more than 60% of the company's space and aerospace customers are already using AI in some form in their businesses, which is apparently up from just single digits only around 3 years ago. And he predicts similar growth over the next few years for what we're calling generative AI. And yeah,
60%, you said?
60%, yeah, and that's just any form of AI, but that's increasing exponentially. But he outlined 3 main areas that I thought was interesting for generative AI, and that's geospatial analytics, spacecraft design, and constellation management. So we're thinking, we're waiting to see a lot more news around development there. Of course, very early days, but yeah, there's a lot of activity on the horizon.
Yeah, great time to be a reporter in this industry.
Yeah,
huh?
always keeps me busy.
Yeah. Jason, thanks again for coming by. We really appreciate it. Hopefully you'll stick around and listen to this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
All right. And that's Jason Rainbow from Space News. And again, we thank Space News for making Jason available to us because he's got a lot going on, as do these 4 gentlemen today. So let's get to introductions of our panelists. First up is Chris Cummins. He is the Chief of Staff at Voyager Exploration Systems and, of course, is one of the founders of famed NanoRacks. He's a seasoned finance executive for companies involved in the commercialization of outer space. He has had experience since the early 1980s, finding companies with good odds of building sustainable commercial businesses in space. Of course, NanoRacks was one he helped found, and it has proven his case that commercial space has a future, a great one. Chris, welcome to the Roundtable. We also have with us Jim Cunningham. Jim is the head of DoD business development at Wallaroo AI. Dr. Cunningham is an AI researcher, and he began his research at Arizona State University, leading a team using ML, machine learning, to predict the outcomes of online mathematics students. At Wallaroo, he heads joint research initiatives with the Department of Defense, exploring ways AI can enhance the defense of the US and its allies, including deploying AI models on satellites, which I just referenced, and maybe he can talk a little bit about to what Jason was referring. Wallaroo, by the way, has been selected twice by SpaceWorks to head up orbital prime projects with the USA's Space Force, and it was chosen as one of the orbital prime companies to partner with the Aerospace Corp to advance its technology readiness rating with the DoD. And recently, Wallaroo was selected to take part in the Apollo Accelerator at the Space Domain Awareness TAP Lab in Colorado Springs, where they are collaborating with the Space Force to apply AI solutions to the defense of free peoples everywhere. Jim, welcome. Coming to us from England today, but he's not always in England. He just happens to be there for a special project, is Mr. Stuart Doutridge. Stuart is the Senior Vice President for Advanced Tech with Kratos Defense and the chairman of the fast-growing DIFI. For those of you who can't guess what DIFI is, it's the Digital Intermediate Frequency Interoperability Consortium, an extremely important group for standardization at the ground segment. Mr. Doutridge leads Kratos Satellite Ground Segment Technology Research and Development effort. Before this, he held senior management positions for several major companies and their commercial programs. And for his role with DIFI, he was named a finalist for this year's Satellite Executive of the Year with a magazine I won't name because Jason is here. But he was a finalist for that. I should add, he's, as I mentioned, he's coming to us from Diffie's Plug Fest at Harwell in the UK, which has been taking place all week. There's a showcase tomorrow, Thursday at 1:30, which if you're in the UK, we think you should attend if it's not already oversubscribed. But maybe he'll give us a report on how it's going at the Satellite Applications Catapult this afternoon and any tie into AI. Stuart, welcome, and thanks so much for coming.
Thank you.
Jeremy Fan finally is a co-founder and CEO for Seer AI. We're delighted to have him. He's leveraged his expertise in data fusion, hedge funds, and capital markets to solve problems with innovative analytics and unique data solutions. He's led and grown the data-driven company that provides insights and intelligence for various industries and sectors, and he's absolutely got a lot to say on this subject. Prior to Seer AI, Jeremy was the CEO and CPO of Space No, a satellite imagery analytics company. Jeremy, welcome.
And thank you for having me.
Great to see you. And you took your baseball cap off. I'm so depressed. I'm gonna send you a Notre Dame hat. How's that?
I'll send you one. You'll have a Seer AI hat in the mail. How about that?
All right, I love it. Well, let's Jeremy, let's start off with you since you're going to send me a hat. Where is, generally speaking, the convergent point between private and government right now when it comes to AI? Is there one, and do we need to describe it or define it a little more accurately?
I think I think we chew up the entire hour getting into the definition, so we won't do that. I'll speak to more, I think what Jason outlined, I think is right, that there's a geospatial analytics component that I think is really where what I can speak to, what Seer AI can speak to. We see an incredible amount of activity from both the DoD and the IC and government generally around trying to figure out how to use AI in the geospatial context. So taking the data, doing something with it. And there's been at least a decade of work there, but I think what we're starting to see is a greater trust on behalf of all those agencies in bringing in commercial solutions. In fact, I think entities like In-Q-Tel, which we're part of the In-Q-Tel portfolio, that's the investment arm of the CIA, and others are very, very active now in pushing commercial solutions, keeping them commercial solutions, which is critical, and allowing for all the agencies to benefit from better things around AI. So let me give you one definition, just leave it with that. My final point is where Seer AI is, and I think we're seeing the majority of the work that is being put out there from the government is really around the data side. Better said, it's our view, and I think it's we could argue about the percentages, but the majority of the AI revolution is really basically a data problem and getting data to the models. So we say data is 80% of the problem, and the models are 20%. And so I think that most of the activity now is the CIA, DoD, et cetera, the IC want to be able to bring in huge amounts of data, and not just huge data like satellite data, but lots and lots of multi-sensor data. And I think the struggle over the last 10 years has been harnessing all that data and then presenting it to the AI. Right. Whereas the AI component, I don't think is as interesting to most, because the models have sort of been built. The object detection models, change detection, those are sort of in place. It's feeding the models, feeding the beast that is AI, is ultimately, I think, where the most of the activity we're seeing, at least from the government, is right now.
Yeah, thank you. And you guys think you really have a software solution for that, which I want to come back to later, right? Because it's a relatively new model, maybe extremely new. Jim, I want to stay on this subject with you, though. That Jeremy got us started off on this convergent point. I mean, you have a mandate at Wallaroo to, as I say, protect the national interest in the interest of free peoples everywhere. That's pretty significant. Where does the commercial piece come into that, or does it, in your view?
The commercial companies are playing a really critical role because the government itself is lagging behind, and they need commercial companies to step up and provide the technology and the know-how to make AI happen at the government level. And so what Wallaroo is doing is providing AI infrastructure so that models can be deployed in any environment, and that whether it's at the edge on a satellite, or if it's in a gov cloud, or at a place like the TAP Lab, which is tracking threats that are launching into space, commercial companies have to partner with the government to bring the government up to speed. There's no way that the old paradigm of the government taking decades to develop technology with all the classified data and all the red tape that the government normally has to go through in order to develop internally all these systems can really be a sustainable paradigm for the future. What is really needed is to, sprint ahead in order to meet the pacing threat that is out there, so that, and in order to meet that pacing threat, government and industry are going to have to collaborate together.
Yeah. Jim, I just to refer maybe to TAP or some of the other projects, including deploying AI models on satellites. It seems to me, and Jeremy again was alluding to this, and I'm sure the other guys, Chris and Stuart, will too. It almost, I mean, from a layman's point of view, there seems to be a requirement for better processes for this to happen, because the acceleration of the requirement it seems extreme when we think about the threats out there, the complexity of it. Have you observed any improvements in process between, the Protestants and the Catholics? Because we're talking about two different sides of the street here, right?
I think the TAP Lab is a great example of this. And so what's going on at the SCA TAP Lab in Colorado Springs, and it's headed up by Major Sean Allen, which is really the kind of the visionary for this. But what he's done is he's brought together academia and commercial and the Space Force in order to work together to kind of develop a showcase of what is the art of the possible. And so what's great about it is, because we're using unclassified data, we can move quickly and we can kind of cut through that red tape, and we can actually show what the cutting edge technology is really capable of, what it can do, and automated chains of detecting launches and satellites or other objects in orbit that could be a threat to the U.S. or its allies is being demonstrated. And so this kind of paradigm, I think, is really helpful, because it can be demonstrated, and then the DoD can come and say, hey, I think this is really cool technology. Let's buy this, or let's go further into research in this particular area. But I think it's a great paradigm.
Okay. Chris, let me switch to you. I was referring to that Michael Dell quote this morning. I think I saw it on CNBC here in the United States, that AI is at its core a productivity tool and shouldn't be, he actually said it shouldn't be overly regulated yet. But when you hear that, and when you listen to your colleagues, I mean, how would you start to regulate, or as Jason said, begin to revert what we're seeing in AI, so that we can strike this balance and, I guess, take away some of the fear of AI?
Interesting question. What NanoAx Voyager exploration systems it's always been a continued interaction in terms of regulation between us and NASA, and it's so you have to push the beast a little bit to get it to move in a new direction. But at the same time, you've got to make sure you're working on joint goals that allow people within an organization to advocate for you. So I think, looking at something like the TAP Lab, where it sounds like there are some strong advocates for commercial activity, and in doing that, they'll learn what guidelines are going to kill the business and what guidelines will help everyone thrive. So there's that.
Yeah, I have to ask you, wearing both your NanoRacks and Voyager caps, which maybe Jeremy has a cap for that too, he'll send, but that would be nice. When you're looking at businesses that have a good odds of being good commercial space businesses, how significantly how important is the regulatory environment in your overall assessment? And when it comes to AI, how would you approach businesses that, like Jeremy's and Jim's and others that come to you? How would you be looking at it, or how are you looking at it now?
Well, you want to see what the interests are, and recognize that the groups you're dealing with in the government are not monolithic. There will be competing interests. So you've got to understand that landscape first. And then look at, one of the things we've always done is look at the set of bottlenecks that are out there, and how a company will help overcome those bottlenecks. Sometimes they're regulatory. Really in the beginning of NanoRacks, one of the huge bottlenecks for our customers was doing all the required paperwork, and it falls in the regulatory category. And being able to streamline that process made it a lot easier for people to get to space. Again, I think having simple regulations, but also a group who can learn how to process the requirements of the regulations is going to be key.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you. And we're starting to get some questions, so we'll certainly get to them. And I want to thank the audience. Stuart, you, as I mentioned, you're also the chairman of DIFI, and this week, as I've also mentioned, you're holding this Plug Fest at Satellite Applications Catapult in the UK. Do you see a connection between the interoperability standards that are being tested there and this topic of AI? Is there some kind of a connection, or not?
I would say there's an indirect connection there, and that's because DIFI is all about allowing interoperability at the digital IF level, and so that it becomes more widely used and more people digitize their ground systems. And where that plays into AI, as you move away from analog ground systems to digital ground systems, you can now capture data in your digital ground systems that was unavailable to you before. And with that captured data, you can then apply AI and ML techniques to help improve the efficiency, or improve the capability, or do preventive maintenance, things like that with the AI. So moving to a digital infrastructure absolutely helps you utilize AI in new ways. It also, on the SATCOM side of the industry, it also helps the industry look way more like a telecommunications company, and therefore allows a lot of the tools and a lot of the things they're doing in the AI field to be applicable into the satellite industry.
Quick question. I know, again, this is first 3 days or so of that event over there, you're kind of watching sausage being made when it comes to this topic. How is it going? Are we moving closer to that interoperability standardization that we're all hoping for on the ground?
Yeah, absolutely. The testing on the 1.1 version of the standard, which is what the majority of the companies there are at, has gone very well. And today, I haven't heard how today went, but they're working on some corner cases of the 1.1. And they're also doing testing now on the 1.2 version of the standard for interoperability there. And so, no, this is very positive. It's, showing what we wanted it to show, that there is an ecosystem of companies now that absolutely can interoperate at this level. And that's good for the industry.
Yeah, it sure is. And Tamara will put up a link to the Diffie website so that people who are interested in this topic can get involved, because, as we say, it's a really important one. Jeremy, Stuart mentioned data. You started us off on that subject. Talk a little bit about what you guys are doing to accelerate that need to pick up on Chris's words, feed the beast.
Well, I think your last question brought up a word that we care a lot about, which is interoperability. The standards, at least on the data side of formats and where data is either stored or the format in which the data is stored in, are a maze that is very hard for most data scientists or geospatial experts to navigate. And so CRAI really tries to accomplish two things. One is we are the first and only geospatial data mesh product out there, which is the idea that we run on either federated data model or decentralized data model is really the way to think of it, which is you can have your data in Amazon Blob Storage, you could be in an Esri server, you can be anywhere. And what we've done is said the volume of data that is needed to feed that beast is so large, and it comes in so many different, let's call it languages, that we needed to build a middle language, a middleware, a common language really, where all this data could speak the same language and then be handed to the next step, which is the modeling step, the AI. And where we use AI and where the AI in CRAI is that we believe that the tools of AI can really be brought to bear on understanding what that data is useful for. So let's say you have a satellite, a sensor that is measuring some spectral band, and you have another sensor, it could be a ground sensor, that is a laser measuring methane at ground level, whatever it might be. The AI that we're dedicated to and we're building as part of our mission is a machine-led, call it librarian. Somebody who can say, that data on the ground sensor can answer these kind of questions. That sensor in space can answer those kind of questions. They may be able to answer the same question, but the machine should be able to cipher what is data useful for. It should be able to catalog it. Again, the librarian put it in a card catalog of what does this data, what kind of use cases does this data apply to, and then bring it when called upon by the various models that may be built today and in the future. So we're, at the end of the day, CRAI is data agnostic. We're vertical agnostic, even though we do like geospatial or spatiotemporal data, and we're model agnostic. Clients can run models on our platform. It really doesn't matter. It's how do you bring massive scale to the challenges that AI that brings to us. And ultimately, we don't have it yet. We didn't bring it up, but how do you vet data that goes into these models is becoming, the big topic. The hallucination of AI output is probably a function of the data input. So we really put the premium on, let's get the data right. Let's get it to the models in the easiest, fastest, lowest cost form, and let them let the models run.
Yeah, and that issue of hallucinations, AI hallucinations, is one that Tamara, I think you wanted me to ask later on, and I certainly will. But Chris, he's talking about massive scale, right? I mean, AI is seemingly becoming embedded in every aspect that requires machine learning and models and business models. I mean, first of all, do you agree with what he said? And then secondly, it would seem to me that there are a range of opportunities now for companies to begin to percolate and to create, the kind of ecosystems that we need to keep our industry moving in the right direction here.
Yeah. Oh, maybe first a question that's been bugging me for the past year or so is, and maybe something like what Siri replaces this, but is there a standard sort of four-dimensional gazetteer of, where you report items out in space, where you report observations and such. And to me, that's having that structure in the data would help a lot if it's not already there. And that's more my ignorance, I hope, than it not existing. So there's that, we usually try to work with our customers, and we're not really a data generator ourselves. We're helping a whole number of customers test instruments and handle data as they're doing their tests. And the good news is that the bandwidth, in our case, between the ISS and the ground has grown exponentially over the time that NRX has existed. But it will continue to grow, and so I think the transport link will be as important as the amount of data, and again, the quality of data. We have to be very careful of what gets into that data stream.
Yeah. Well, Jim, I'm going to go to you because, when I look at you, I see my own security and preservation, my way of life. Not too much pressure there on you, but, let's talk about AI hallucinations then. It's also much discussed, much talked about issue. How much do we trust the data and learning tools, most of which are quite new? Subject to bias, especially in critical roles like national defense. I mean, how are you guys vetting that? And it can also influence private sector financial performance. Where does that go on your anxiety spectrum?
I think that being able to trust AI is a very is a relevant topic and needs to be addressed. Hallucinations really apply to generative AI. So like when you think of ChatGPT, my first experience with hallucinations was I was using ChatGPT when it was first came out to do a little bit of research and stuff like that. And I asked ChatGPT, you've given me all this information. Can you give me 5 scholarly articles that support what you're putting up here? And ChatGPT was very compliant, and it gave me 5 scholarly resources, none of which existed. And so, but that is really a function of generative AI. Generative AI is to generate information, in kind of a way of synthesizing all the data that it's been trained on. And it really is just one type of AI. And so if you have something like supervised learning, which is really a huge part of AI, and it doesn't have hallucinations, but it can make mistakes. And so one of the things that Wallaroo has on board is tools to monitor models in production for things like data drift and model drift. And really what that is that, you think of an area like space as very dynamic, and the data that you originally trained your model on in the first place to be able to make predictions, that data environment can change over time. And if that data environment changes, then the model needs to be adjusted or retrained on the changing environment and the new data that's coming in, so that it doesn't respond as it would with the old data and the old data environment. And so there always needs to be a human in the loop somewhere, and making sure that the models are operating in the way that they were intended to operate in the first place. It's not something like you just set it and forget it. You have to be constantly making sure that everything is operating the way that it was designed to operate. And that's a very critical part of the AI pieces.
Yeah. Jeremy, I mean, that's sort of the data calling audibles, right? Or calling audibles on the data, however you want to look at that. How do you guys look at that or accommodate it?
Yeah, Jim, I think you brought up a really important point, and we recognize our chief scientist and co-founder, as well as our CTO, lived this for a decade or more. And so what we did is we started thinking about, or their genius started thinking about, how does one allow for the retrain? How do you accelerate the ability to retrain? How do you remember that you need to retrain, let's say it that way? And how do you trigger a changing environment at prompt to the models? It's really important. So what we did is we use a knowledge graph to govern essentially how data is structured and the connections in data. We don't use a knowledge graph to store it, but the knowledge graph is intended to be this place where the knowing how to work with data, what the data is, et cetera, is all stored there. What we did is we created a version controlled knowledge graph. So you can go back and you can understand that, hey, something changed. I need to be able to roll back time. I need to be able to understand these things. And what I think the founding of our company 4 years ago was really dedicated to is to thinking about data. All data really is spatio-temporal in nature. And it's the temporal side that people don't do a good job with. The time component is really vital. And so whether you version control your graph, whether you were able to look back and say, I didn't understand the data back then, but now I do, or to your point, Jim, a new environment, new data becomes available, or even more importantly, a sensor has a new sophistication or something that becomes available that wasn't there, is critical. And that is something that CRI from day one treated time as an equal to space. And I think that is where most software, at least in geospatial, falls down. Did I answer your question, Lou?
You did.
Yeah.
And you it was a very informed one too. Stuart, we've got a question from Elizabeth Stanley here, which I'm going to direct at you, wearing your Kratos hat. And by the way, I realize that Jeremy and Jim, I've mispronounced your company's names twice, so I apologize for that. I'll get that right. Stuart, as Senior Vice President for Advanced Technology with Kratos Defense, Elizabeth's asking a question that I think might be relevant, which is, what steps should organizations take to avoid groupthink about the benefits and risks associated with AI? And I guess that could apply with other related technologies now as it relates to our industry. You want to pick that one up? How do you avoid groupthink about the benefits and risks?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you just have to you got to be honest with yourself and with your team about what these technologies can and can't do and how mature they are at the current time. I'll take an area that we played with AI that we found that we don't feel AI is mature enough, and that's an area where AI. There's a lot of companies out there that have AI code generators, and so you can have to augment your software developers. They can do the simple code, and in the times we have played with it recently, what we have found is that yes, they generate more code, but they don't generate better code or more productivity out of it at this stage, because the code that's being developed is just not mature enough, and the model capability, the AI capabilities, at least for our applications, just aren't there yet. However, we can see it steadily getting better very quickly. And so you can see a time, 6 months, a year, 18 months out, where this capability will probably get to the point where it be very valuable, and almost every software developer will use some type of code assist eventually. But for us, and what we've seen so far, today is not quite that day. And so that's what I mean, where you got to be able to go in and, when the group thinking, yeah, you read all about this, you hear how great it is. I saw 2 different studies that said, basically code people who are using these tools generate twice as much code as people who don't, which sounds great, but that doesn't mean they produce twice as much valuable code and productive code, and actually that it makes them more productive. So I think you just got to honestly evaluate these things to see the real value in them. And again, I think it'll eventually get there, and I think it'll be a great assistant for code developers, and I think it'll make the world way more productive. It's just, I don't think it's quite ready for prime time yet.
Yeah, but you're saying within 18 months, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah. Chris, before I go to Joe Fargnoli for our New York Minute, do you want to pick up on that issue of groupthink organizations? How can they avoid it when it comes to AI in particular? Is there something you've learned in your vast experience? Joe, I think you're on mute. Chris.
Thanks. I think it is listening, for us, it's listening to customers. Our customers, whether they're, and some of them are very young, some of them are very experienced, come in with new questions, new ideas, new thoughts on how to use the infrastructure we've built. And in doing that, and this is so core, operating and learning at the same time are the things that are going to introduce you to new challenges. And a lot of talk may not get you, free of groupthink, but actually operating will often make you force you to get
building the plane as you fly it. Yeah, encourages you to keep it up. Yeah. Okay, fair enough. So thank you for this segment, guys. What we're going to do now is we're going to have the reaction to this from the New York Space Alliance. And then I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping about what's coming up at SSPI. And then we'll hear audience questions for you. And if we have time, I want to talk a little bit about the role of national sovereign governments in supporting some of the work that you guys are doing in the funding as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Joe Fargnoli. Joe, interesting discussion.
Hey, Lou, great session today. What a great topic and great set of guests today. I want to take a step back and just take a look at kind of what we've talked about and what it really means for the evolution of the space industry and the incorporation of AI and ML technologies. First, I really want to highlight Jeremy and his company, Seer.ai. I think he's got an awesome perspective of looking at bringing spatiotemporal data to the AI revolution, accelerating the AI ML driven actionable insights market. And he did that with Space No, and I'm really looking forward to him doing great things with Seer.ai and bringing AI into the mix here. And the idea of looking at many more problems as being spatiotemporal really emphasizes the role that space plays in that game. So thanks, Jeremy. Really great having you. Also, it was great having Jim with Wallaroo AI. I think they're taking on an amazing problem. They're focusing on production AI at scale, and they make the very correct observation that 90% of AI initiatives fail to produce ROI. This is what worries me about the huge bubble we're going through right now. We're all excited about AI, but it's going to come down to the bottom line. Companies like Wallaroo are going to be really pivotal to help us turn this irrational exuberance into ROI, into quarterly results. And the way they're eliminating AI deployment barriers is really spot on. And I'm really hoping the space industry can lead the way in showing how AI can help us to get to more productivity and more ROI. I really appreciated the description of the TAP Lab. I put a link in the chat. This is the Space Domain Awareness Group's Tools, Applications, and Processing Lab. This is a great example of the role the government is playing to help smaller companies get into the game of addressing government problems in these areas. So again, we always look for that commercial government collaboration. This TAP Lab is a great on-ramp. I'd advise our guests here to take a look at that. I really want to thank Chris for joining. I'm a huge fan of Voyager Space and his whole team. These guys are really leading the way in private capital investment in the emerging space economy. You know, they're looking at accelerating the development of a sustainable space economy, and they're also doing things like enhanced situational awareness, which I think Chris is a little bit modest. I'm sure they're very heavily involved in AI in that arena. So Voyager Space is a great element of this ecosystem. Again, thank you, Chris, for coming.
Yeah.
I want to thank Stuart for coming from Kratos. Kratos is a great company. I think Stuart, quite frankly, was a little bit humble about some of the amazing things that Kratos is doing with AI, particularly the Valkyrie XQ-58A, which is a combat drone designed to deliver weapons or assist fighter jets, and it uses artificial intelligence. Not quite space yet, but that same concept I think is really revolutionary. If you go to the website, there's a link in there on the XQ-58A. I think it's really an example of leadership. I also want to thank Stuart for his leadership in the Diffie Consortium. Although not directly AI related, as Stuart described, the consortium's objective is to enable the digital transformation of space, satellite, and related industries. And as he said, once space goes digital, now AI can come more into the game, and we can advance the entire ecosystem. You know, we talked a little bit about safeguards, and none of the topics really directly nailed it, but I just wanted to kind of give an analogy that came to me during this session. I think about the introduction of high voltage AC versus what was on the market at that time, which was low voltage DC. This was the famous current wars between Edison and Westinghouse, and how for a period of time there were fatalities with AC. Edison created the stunt of the electrocution to turn people off on AC until the technical merits of AC were established. By the early 1890s, that current war was winding down. And although there still were deaths caused by AC, we agreed, unfortunately, the risks were worth the benefits. And we developed new safety measures to fix those problems, and the industry proceeded forward. I hope we have no fatalities or death with AC, with AI rather. But I think as we come together in these kinds of settings and we look at these issues, we look at the value that comes from AI, we can put some of the risks in balance and dedicate ourselves to creating the consortiums like Diffie, and there probably will be others that are dedicated to the safe implementation of AI so that we can continue to grow this industry, just as AC grew the US and the global economy. So great session, Lou, and thank you, Tamara, for assembling this great group, and look forward to our Q&A here.
Hey, Joe, thanks. A bubble, huh, Joseph? Are we in a bubble? Is that how you see it?
I think we're blowing up a bubble right now, quite frankly. If ROI doesn't match exuberant investment, we have a bubble on our hands. Another AI winter could loom. So we need companies like AI and Seer and Kratos and Voyager to help us turn this excitement into return on capital.
Okay.
Because after all, we are running businesses.
That's right. There is a business plan involved here, an investment. That's maybe a good question for the top of the hour. Joe, thanks again. Always appreciate it. And everybody's reminding us here, these companies are all in New York, right? This is the New York Space Business Roundtable. You got it. We're making it happen here. Okay, Tamara, pretty good session we put together so far. Let's do our housekeeping. Tell people what's coming up. Anything we need to know?
Plenty of good stuff. Let's see. Let's start right here.
Okay.
I bet you're saying, what is this screen for, Tamara? But, are you saying that, Lou?
No, I know what it's for. I thought this was an audience quiz. We've got such a smart audience; they would figure it out. Well, we've got on December 2nd, first Monday in December, we'll be in London for the Better Satellite World Awards dinner, the annual event that brings together three of the world's most applicable companies or organizations who are doing things that actually make human life better every day, and we reward them. We'll also have the UK Person of the Year being there, as well as a keynote. That's a terrific event, so we hope you get involved there. We thank Astroscale, among others, for being a sponsor of that event. We've got tell us about the Mentor of the Year, Tamara.
Yeah. So the Mentor of the Year is an award that we give out every year to amazing executives in our industry who go above and beyond to make sure that the incoming or younger generation of satellite and space professionals succeed in the industry. And that award is given out at the same time as our honoring of the 20 under 35 professionals, the very same young professionals who we are looking for our mentors to support. The point of this slide, I just want to call our attention to it, is that all three of these awards, nominations for all three of these awards, are open right now. So if you visit www.sspi.org, you will see the awards opportunities to nominate on our website. So.
Okay. Do we really have to say www anymore?
You know, good point.
Just
But
saying,
yes,
you know.
actually, sometimes you do actually.
Okay. All right. Just bringing it up.
All right.
Inquiring minds will have to know. Why don't you keep going here with SSPI?
I'll keep it moving. So also next week, Thursday, as is true, typically on the fourth Thursday of the month, SSPI Wise is having its all members meeting. This is the last meeting of the administrative year for SSPI Wise. We run from July 1 through June 30th of every year. And so this last session at 2 p.m. Eastern, we're opening the floor to get some brainstorming around what do we want to do with our upcoming year. We're looking for folks to contribute topics, to think about what kinds of engagements we want to participate in, to give us some ideas, to volunteer. So we welcome all participants. The SSPI Wise is for the benefit of women, but it's not exclusively open to women. All are welcome.
Is that a closed meeting on the 27th, though?
Open meeting. All are welcome.
All are welcome. That's what that means. Yeah.
That's pretty much what that means.
www, all are welcome. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. You're on a roll.
All right. Here's the big
welcome.
news. You guys know that we launched about 2 years ago, Space Business Qualified, which is an online learning program for people who want to become very well-rounded in the business of space, which is, of course, right up the New York Space Business Roundtable's alley. If you've come into the industry as an engineer, if you've come into the industry as a marketer, whatever your niche in the industry is, having a bigger picture of the industry is super important. And that's where Space Business Qualified comes in. We're happy to report that as of, I don't know when, but fairly recently, GVF training has now bundled Space Business Qualified into their existing license structure. So if you are already have a license with GVF training, Space Business Qualified is included in your bundle. So we encourage you to participate and to expand your learning in our industry.
Yeah, when we did that deal, when I did that deal with them, you know, the idea of Space Business Qualified was really, we've got so many new entrants into the industry who don't know about the business of space. And, you know, there are probably a couple startups on this panel whose employees could benefit from that. So it's the, that part of it is really the liberal arts piece of this. It's the curriculum for people who want to know about space, just the basics. And it's really important for employees to add value by knowing that. So, we're looking forward to that tie now to the GVF training.
Thank you, Lou. All right, everybody on this call, you came here by Zoom link that is going to no longer work starting next month. So the new link is on your screen. You will also, of course, be getting emails about it. But just, you can jot this down. Cutly, see there's no WW here. CUTT.ly/SSPI NYSBR-24-Q3. That will cover all 3 of the third quarter episodes of the roundtable. So you can register today if you'd like to participate in the next upcoming roundtables. With that, hey,
Either
guess
there.
what? Lou's going to talk all about this one.
Yeah, well, we're really good. We're excited. We're going to be going upstate, Joe, going back home, right? I grew up in the Finger Lakes, so we're going to be going up to Cornell on September 18th for a session there with the New York Space and Technology Consortium, which is funded by the DoD to develop more businesses in New York, like Wallaroo and CRAI. So we really welcome you to come up there. September is just a terrific time to be up in Ithaca. Versus Space will welcome us there and others. And this is the one where you will see how New York State has put together a commercial space industry. All we're waiting for is the economic development group here in New York State to sort of continue to pull this together so that we can be a powerhouse like other parts of the country. So we're really happy about that. And then in London, we have a London Space Business Roundtable now, thanks to our friends at Hogan Lovells Law, and we will be live there on September 30th to talk about space debris. The UK government is huddling, as they say, or deliberating over the summer about how they are going to address space debris and space sustainability issues. So we'll have more information about the policies and the opportunities in the UK at that segment. So again, London at the end of September. Live. Okay. What is this? I see a microphone. I see August, Tamara.
Okay, everyone, for the month of August, you notice I'm skipping over September. You'll get news about over July. You'll get news about July. We're going to have an exciting, really kind of fun topic on UAPs. I think that's what they call it in July. But in August, we're having an open mic. And so we're inviting you to come on the roundtable and share your technology and what good is it going to do in the world. Whatever your space and satellite technologies are, you'll be getting instructions for how to apply to be on the open mic. Everybody is welcome. We're going to give some preference to New York businesses. So this is really an opportunity to just shine and let us know just how you're making a better satellite world.
So we'll know more about that in the coming weeks.
Yes.
And Joe said he's going to sing on that open mic. All right, Joe? You do my way?
You know it. You know
okay.
it.
All right. Okay. You know, I really want to thank the audience. I mean, you've been with us every month on this, and you know, we hope we make it worth your while, and we'll continue to do that and work as hard as we can. And hopefully, you can tell by the group we had today that we're doing that. Listen, before we close here within the next 6 minutes, I want to ask our panelists about the role of sovereign governments in the subject of AI. Let me go to Jeremy first. As you know, Luxembourg has been doing some really significant things strategically. They're trying to grow their GDP through commercial space endeavors. We've got Redwire doing business over there. Promus Ventures now has a fund there. I guess I'll ask you, and then we'll go around the table. Jeremy, what do you think of an initiative like Luxembourg's? Is it necessary now to help us scale AI ventures like yours?
Absolutely, and I'm biased because the Orbital Fund, Promus, that you referenced, Promus was our lead investor, helped us start the company. I just literally got off the plane a few hours ago from Luxembourg, so I spent the last couple of days with the Ministry of Economics, the Luxembourg Institute of Science and Technology, and so on and so forth, plotting our involvement in that giant ecosystem, which I'm very impressed by. But an unbiased answer is absolutely yes, Lou. And the reason is that just like you framed the original intent of today's session, I don't believe companies like Siri.ai are real true innovation around, it's particularly around geospatial analytics, spatiotemporal aspects of AI can happen without some element of government buy-in and funding, because ultimately everything we talked about today takes a lot of time. And your typical startup life cycle is too short to be able to survive much of what we talked about today. So having a company like an Inquitel or involvement like the Luxembourg ecosystem, which again, it's an investor in us, is critical. I'll finish my comment by saying one really exciting thing. The Luxembourg high performance computing enterprise or effort is where a lot of really interesting future AI work will be done. We're collaborating with them, but the ability to run large scale simulations, to train the models, to be, the early baby steps getting to the true AI that we all hope one day will be available to all is already happening. We're a big part of that. We're a part of it. How does huge amounts of data get to that supercompute? And then what are the models? What does that simulation engine ultimately look like? So again, you're right. Luxembourg is approaching it correctly. They have plenty of interested parties, both from the commercial side as well as the NGO side involved. And I think they have a great frame of reference, which is nothing happens too quickly. And it requires what Luxembourg is doing, attracting very large brains, human brains to come together and actually execute on that plan.
Yeah, they work at it methodically. They're
yeah,
like the Michigan defense. Jim, I'm sorry for my international guests. That's a football reference, but Jim, let me thank you, Jeremy. Let me ask this another way. Luxembourg is a model for many of us in the industry, win or lose. But is New York State helping you out at all? Because New York is a sovereign state here in the United States. They've got a huge industry. I mean, here you are doing great things in New York State.
New York has been very supportive of us. I'm not as plugged in to the New York aspects of the business as my CEO because he's located there. I'm in Arizona, but yeah, New York has been very supportive of us, and I think that AI is a complicated technology. Space is a complicated place to operate in. And it's going to take the collaboration of government and industry and even international governments to actually do what we need to do. I think especially, in terms of the defense of our country, the allies are going to really have to collaborate together with technology, both at a commercial level and at a defense level, to really accomplish what we need to accomplish. And so I think that sovereign nations, especially in the free world, working together to keep the world free is going to be super important.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris, to you, with this regard to this issue of again the importance of the economic development play here, which is essentially what I'm talking about. I mean, we see in parts of the country now, the commercial space industry spiking regional economies. Gross domestic local product is beginning to be accelerated. How do you look at that issue? What needs to be done?
Well, let me go back and say, first, before I worked NanoRacks, I was in the financial world for many years and actually set up a bunch of companies in Luxembourg. And I'm seeing the same great coordination there between the corporate world and not only local regulators, but it's Luxembourg's government's ability to access international forums, ESA and ITU and things like that can be incredibly strong. I would assume, I'm not sure, that where there are international bodies regarding AI, they can be a great adjunct to commercial voices. So that's that.
Yep.
In terms
About a
of
minute left, Chris.
yeah,
I'm gonna go
local,
start
in
now.
terms of local activity, it goes up and down. You have areas like Houston where it's spiking. That comes with a set of problems too. It becomes harder to hire people. So that's where we need to look at other places like New York and make sure there's a great education component so that you have people who are at the point where they can be trained quickly and become productive quickly.
Yeah, that's a terrific point, and we really need to pick it up at that level. Stuart, last word to you. From the UK, is the government there, in your view, supportive of some of the things like you're doing down at the Satellite Applications Catapult?
For the UK, absolutely. You say it with UK Space, you see a lot of companies developing and moving, creating development teams in the UK specifically because of the funding that's been available over the last several years from UK Space. So there's no doubt the UK government has made a commitment and made a investment to improve their GDP through developing space capabilities inside the country.
Yeah.
And I think personally, I think that's a good investment for governments, because not only does it grow GDP, but the largest customer for satellite data, whether that's Earth observation data, whether that's communications data, are governments. And so it's a good investment for the government to be strong in a field where governments are the single biggest customer of the data or the service. So I think these countries are making wise decisions, and I think you see good payoffs for them.
Well said. And I think on that note, we'll close it. I'm always reminded, Tamara, that the word deterrence is actually, deterrence is a Latin word that literally means scaring someone off from doing something stupid. So I think this discussion today for investors, for startups, has clarified thinking for a lot of people. And I really, really thank Jim, Jeremy, Chris, and Stuart, and Jason and Joe for making the time to do this today. It's been a great discussion. Tamara, you want to sing us out, as they say?
No. Next, I might sing in August, but not today.
Okay, so you come back in August and you'll be singing up in Cornell.
Everyone, thank you so much for an exciting and wonderful discussion. To all of our audience, thank you for your patience. I'm usually extremely strict about kicking us out by 1:15, so Lou got a grace today. So
Yeah,
everyone have a wonderful today.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Good
you.
luck going forward.
Happy Juneteenth.
Happy Juneteenth. Thank you.